Welcome to the Kentucky Bourbon Traveler. The 2018 bourbon judges in San Francisco picked the best bourbons. It's all about Heaven Hill Distilleries this year. We're reviewing the 2018 San Francisco Best Single Barrel and Best Bourbon pick, Henry McKenna Single Barrel 10-year Bottled and Bond. And we're keeping it Irish with a gourmet bourbon Irish stew you're gonna love.
Hi, I'm Kent, and welcome back to Louisville, Kentucky. Thanks for joining us. Tara A. and Michael H. and Lisa P. won last week's Traveler Hats giveaway. Lisa in Colorado Springs emailed.
My name is Lisa. I used to live in Kentucky. I now live in Colorado, and you bet I'm still a Kentucky Bourbon Traveler.
We'll continue to email subscribers as we draw names for the address to send your hat to. If you want to be on the webcast, just send us a picture or selfie and we'll put it on next time. Today, it's definitely an Irish episode with the San Francisco competition's best bourbon, Irish immigrant Henry McKenna's, and a recipe for Irish bourbon beef stew. The San Francisco World Spirits Competition is held every year to pick the best spirits in the world. Connoisseurs, distillers, and noted experts vote blind for the best spirits. And the 2018 bourbon category was owned this year by Heaven Hill Distillery. Heaven Hill's Henry McKenna Single Barrel Bottled and Bond we're covering won the Best Bourbon Award and the Best Single Barrel at the 2018 San Francisco competition. Heaven Hill's Elijah Craig, you saw us probably covering a while back, won the 2018 Best Small Batch Bourbon too. Heaven Hill Distillery, the producer of these winners in Bardstown, Kentucky, has been on a roll the last year. The family distillery's president, Max Shapiro, was inducted into the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame and given the Lifetime Achievement Award in September 2018. It seems to be Heaven Hill's Distillery this year, a Heaven Hill Distillery's year, releasing bourbon made from 2008 to 2011, which Parker Beam, the previous master distiller for Heaven Hill, had a hand in prior to his death. Parker Beam also is a relative of the same family that ran Jim Beam, and his great-granddad was first cousin to Jim Beam. Heaven Hill Distilleries in Bardstown, Kentucky has been around since 1935, just after Prohibition, and is one of the largest family distilleries and also members of Kentucky's Bourbon Trail. Things weren't always that great for Heaven Hill, though. It looked pretty grim in 1996 when Heaven Hill's distillery and many of the rick houses were burned to the ground in a huge historic fire. They worked with other distillers after that point on the Bourbon Trail to get back on their feet again. And the other distillers helped them to literally rise from the ashes. Flash forward 22 years and Heaven Hill has 56 storehouses in Bardstown, Cox's Creek, and Louisville, Kentucky. And it gives them plenty of choices of where to age the oldest bourbon and bond bourbon we're covering today. We haven't covered many single barrel bourbons because each barrel can vary and the distillers have to have incredible quality control, consistency to assure each barrel is good enough to stand on its own without being mixed. The fact that Heaven Hill's small batch, Elijah Craig, which is of course a mixture of barrels, and their single barrel, both won these awards, indicate that Heaven Hill, even 7 to 10 years ago, was doing a fine job of maintaining consistency. Our 2018 award-winning Best Bourbon and Best Single Barrel Bourbon today is the Henry McKenna Single Barrel 10-year Bottled and Bond 100 proof. I picked this bottle up for $33 in a grocery store here in Louisville, and it's not a premium price for a bourbon this good. Henry McKenna is named after the 1800s Irish immigrant who brought his whiskey recipe from County Derry, Ireland. He founded the family whiskey distillery in the 1850s in Fairfield, Nelson County, Kentucky. And the McKenna family continued even after his death on Louisville's Whiskey Row until the 1940s. Now of the 89 distillers that used to be downtown, there's only a few that have moved back or opened new distilleries on Whiskey Row. And Henry McKenna is made at Bardstown, Kentucky by Heaven Hill. McKenna is the longest stored, aged, bottled in bond bourbon at 10 years old. If you're wondering what bottled in bond is, it's a legal standard, which means bottled at 100 proof, made by one distiller in one distillation season, and aged at least 4 years in a federally bonded and supervised warehouse. It shows someone didn't buy liquor, put their own label on it, and sell it as another brand, which explains why there's thousands of bourbon labels, but there's only hundreds of distillers. McKenna is light for a 10-year-old bourbon. Nice color, and much like the 2017 San Francisco's best bourbon pick, it is spicy on the finish. It tastes of vanilla, yet has a touch of caramel and a heavy element of spice, which with subdued oak highlights. This bourbon has a spicy finish and a little burn. You can see it there, how it runs. McKenna's mash bill, or grain ingredients, are 75 to 78% Kentucky and Indiana corn, 10% to 13% rye, and 12% barley. McKenna is aged in a number 3 charcoaled white oak barrel, which explains the really lighter taste and color of this 10-year bourbon. Next up, Christiana is cooking a gourmet Irish bourbon beef stew. We spoke with a recent arrival from County Cork, Ireland for a few additional touches to the recipe. Go ahead, give up some of your bourbon for cooking. It's worth it.
Hello, I'm Christiane, original from Würzburg, Germany, and today we're making a Irish bourbon beef stew in a crock pot, so you can put it all together in the morning and have dinner ready at night. The main ingredients of the Irish bourbon stew is potatoes, parsnip, onions, and carrots, which I'm already putting in the crock pot. Then I'm adding tomato paste, pured tomatoes, also into the crock pot. Now I have a mixture of balsamic vinegar, rosemary, and garlic and bay leaves. And it's going to be so good. Beef broth. And of course, wonderful bourbon, 1 cup. But I'm only going to use about 3/4 of a cup of the bourbon because I want to add that later on so the bourbon doesn't cook all out. Spoons of olive oil. Get it nice and warm. I'm putting the meat right in a pan. And then I have a mixture of spices which are salt, pepper, rosemary, oregano, thyme, sugar, and parsley. And I also add that to the meat. And all you want to do is brown your meat on all sides. Meat, we're going to put it, the rest of it, in a crock pot, and we cook it for 1 hour on high, and then for 3 hours to 3.5 hours on low. And you will have a fantastic bourbon, Irish bourbon beef stew. Enjoy.
Kentucky Bourbon Trail. traveler.